I'm not sure. Well, anyway, but then I had a piano when I was 10.
At 78 years old, Benny Andersson, the renowned keyboardist and composer of ABBA, has finally broken his silence about the emotional burdens he carried throughout his career. For decades, his music brought joy to millions. But behind those melodies lay a story of personal struggles, emotional restraint, and a desperate need for survival. The songs that defined ABBA's sound were more than just catchy pop anthems. They were an emotional shield for Benny, a way for him to express what words couldn't. Now, in his later years, he is revealing the truths that were once hidden and exploring how the pain and turmoil of his personal life shaped ABBA's iconic music. The music of ABBA was never just about fame or fortune. It was an expression of the emotional challenges they faced as individuals, and Benny's music became their way of coping with the pressures that surrounded them. Early life and musical beginnings. Benny Andersson's journey to becoming one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century began in Stockholm's Vasan district on December 16, 1946. Born into a family where music was ever present, Benny's early years were shaped by his surroundings. His father, Gusta, worked as a civil engineer, while his mother, Illa, was a homemaker who kept their modest household in order. Benny's home was one where music wasn't just a background feature. It was woven into the very fabric of daily life. Both his father and grandfather, Ephraim, were talented accordion players, and from a young age, Benny was surrounded by melodies. When Benny was just 6 years old, he was given his own accordion. This gift sparked his passion for music, and it didn't take long for him to begin exploring a variety of musical genres. Benny absorbed everything from Swedish folk tunes to classical compositions, and even ventured into the German Schlager style. His exposure to such a wide range of musical traditions fostered an early love for melody and harmony, but it was also the beginning of his musical evolution. At age 10, Benny received a piano, and it became his primary instrument for self-expression. Unlike many musicians of his generation who attended formal music schools, Benny was entirely self-taught. He learned by ear, developing a sharp sense of musical intuition that would later define his work. It wasn't long before Benny began creating his own music, teaching himself melodies and developing his ear for complex harmonies that conveyed both joy and sorrow. His ability to hear emotions in the chords he played allowed him to communicate in ways that words could not. This unique ability would later become a hallmark of his work with ABBA. By his teenage years, Benny was already performing at local youth clubs. Music was not just a hobby. It was a path toward independence. As he began performing in various clubs, he used his music to express his emotions and build connections with others. His early work with bands like Elveret's Spellman Slag in 1964 laid the groundwork for what would become an extraordinary musical career. The band, which specialized in a mix of instrumental pop and humor, was Benny's first experience in a professional music group. But it was his breakthrough with the HEP Stars that would truly launch his career. The HEP Stars and the formation of ABBA. In 1965, Benny joined the HEP Stars, one of Sweden's most popular rock bands of the era. As the keyboardist, he quickly gained recognition for his musical talent and began contributing original songs to the band. With hits like Sunny Girl and Wedding, Benny showed the Resulsalwau or Silsalwau Hausernses, not just a keyboard player, but a talented composer capable of creating songs that were both catchy and emotionally resonant. His pursuit of perfection and his dedication to musical depth set him apart from other musicians in the Swedish pop scene. Rather than following the trends of shallow pop music, Benny wanted to craft songs that were rich in emotion, with harmonies that could convey both light and dark feelings. It was in 1966, however, that Benny's life took a dramatic turn. While still working with the ABBA stars, he met Björn Ulvaeus, a fellow musician from the Hootenanny Singers. Their collaboration began as a casual meeting, but there was an undeniable chemistry between the two. Benny, who had always been the creative force behind his bands, found a kindred spirit in Björn. While Benny excelled at writing melodies and crafting musical arrangements, Björn had a remarkable gift for writing lyrics. Their partnership felt like the perfect balance of musical and lyrical skill, and together they began creating songs that were both simple in structure, but emotionally rich in content. In 1969, Benny's life took another pivotal turn when he met Annie Fried Lyngstad, known as Frida, a talented singer who would later become one of ABBA's key vocalists. Around the same time, Björn met Agnetha Fältskog, another rising star with a captivating voice. These personal relationships led to even deeper collaborations, and the four of them began performing together under the name Fest Folket in 1970. This was an important moment for Benny and the others, as it marked the beginning of a partnership that would eventually evolve into one of the most successful pop groups in history. Their first public performance together occurred in Cyprus, where they performed for UN soldiers, an event that set the stage for the group's future success. ABBA's rise to global stardom. In 1972, Benny, Björn, Agnetha, and Frida officially formed ABBA. The name was derived from the first letters of their first names, making it an easy-to-remember and catchy moniker. Their first single, People Need Love, was released that same year. While it only achieved modest success, it marked the beginning of their international journey. However, it wasn't until 1974 that ABBA made a major breakthrough. They entered the Eurovision Song Contest with Waterloo, a lively, infectious pop song that ultimately won the competition. The victory in Brighton, England, was a pivotal moment in their careers, catapulting ABBA to international stardom. Throughout the 1970s, ABBA became synonymous with catchy melodies, dazzling performances, and infectious energy. Songs like SOS, Mamma Mia, Dancing Queen, and Fernando became global anthems. However, despite Benny being the creative force behind many of the band's hits, he often remained in the background. Agnetha and Frida were the faces of ABBA, with their stunning voices and striking looks often grabbing the spotlight. Björn was frequently the public spokesperson, handling interviews and interactions with the media. Benny, though central to ABBA's sound, was often overlooked by fans who admired the singers, rather than the musician crafting the iconic sound behind the scenes. ABBA's success was undeniable. They quickly became one of the most popular bands in the world, with their music filling discos, radios, and living rooms across the globe. But as the group's fame continued to rise, the personal lives of its members began to unravel. The strain behind the success. While ABBA's music was filling arenas and topping charts, the personal lives of its members were becoming increasingly complicated. Benny, in particular, began to feel the weight of the pressures of fame and the emotional toll of the intense work schedule. He had always poured his soul into his music, using the piano as a way to express emotions that were difficult to articulate through words. However, this intense focus on his music came at a cost. Benny's dedication to crafting the perfect sound in the studio often led him to retreat emotionally from those around him, including his bandmates and, most notably, his wife, Annie Fried. Benny and Annie Fried's marriage, which seemed like a fairy tale to the outside world, was not without its challenges. While Frida was open and expressive, Benny was more emotionally reserved. He often struggled to communicate his feelings directly, preferring to express himself through his music rather than words. This emotional distance created tension in their relationship. Frida, who had endured a difficult childhood marked by abandonment and loss, craved stability and reassurance in her personal life, qualities Benny found hard to provide. As time went on, the differences between them grew, and their marriage began to crack under the gewichtens on the strain of both their personal issues and the pressures of being in the spotlight. Despite the outward appearance of success, the emotional distance between Benny and Annie Frid became too much to overcome. In 1981, the Kurfürsius Moram Jorendurix Kosius Kur Polak quietly separated, and their divorce was finalized shortly afterward. This was a difficult time for Benny, who had invested so much emotionally into both his music and his relationship. Though their separation was not publicized in the same dramatic fashion as some other celebrity breakups, the pain and emotional toll on both Benny and Annie Frid was significant. Benny later admitted that his emotional detachment had played a major role in the collapse of their marriage, and he confessed that he had often given his best lines to songs, not to the people who needed to hear them from him. While ABBA's external success continued, the unraveling of their personal lives mirrored the growing tension within the group. By the late 1970s, ABBA's members had begun to realize that the magic that had once united them was fading. The relentless touring schedule, the growing strain of personal relationships, and the exhaustion of living up to the world's expectations had begun to take its toll. Despite their efforts to carry on, the chemistry that had once made ABBA unstoppable was no longer there. The end of ABBA, exhaustion and creative burnout. ABBA, one of the most iconic pop groups of all time, burst into the music scene in the 1970s, sweeping the world with their catchy melodies and unforgettable harmonies. With songs like Dancing Queen and Mamma Mia, they became synonymous with joy, energy, and the spirit of the 70s. However, as the decade gave way to the 1980s, the relentless touring, pressures of fame, and emotional complexities within the band began to take their toll. The cracks in the seemingly perfect group started to show, and their music began to reflect the strains they were experiencing, both personally and professionally. The release of their final studio album, The Visitors, in 1981 marked a distinct shift in ABBA's sound. Known for their upbeat, catchy tunes, the band took a more introspective turn with this album, embracing a darker, more reflective tone. The album's songs, like One of Us and The Winner Takes It All, dealt with themes of heartbreak, loneliness, and the painful end of relationships, both romantic and professional. These tracks revealed the emotional turbulence that had been brewing behind the scenes for years. The band's carefully crafted public image of happiness and unity began to unravel, and the personal struggles of the members came through in their music more powerfully than ever before. By 1982, the creative energy that had once fueled ABBA seemed to dissipate. There was no dramatic farewell or public announcement of their breakup. Instead, the final performances and studio sessions were quieter, almost as if the band members instinctively knew that the magic that once united them was gone. They had each given so much of themselves to the band, and now there was nothing left to give. Benny Andersson later admitted that it took him nearly a decade to fully process the end of ABBA. While Agnetha Feltskog and Annie Frid Lyngstad seemed to move on more quickly, Benny found it harder to let go of the group that had defined his career and personal life for so long. The toll of ABBA's success was not just physical, but emotional. As the band members navigated their personal lives, including divorces, growing tensions, and emotional exhaustion, they began to realize that the price of fame had become too high. The band that had once been a symbol of joy and unity had become fractured by the very forces that had once propelled them to the top. The emotional weight of their experiences, combined with the pressures of constantly being in the public eye, made it impossible for ABBA to continue as a cohesive unit. The break was not just a hiatus, it was an end to an era, And though the world didn't fully understand it at the time, ABBA's music would never sound the same again. Life after ABBA, searching for peace and reflection. After ABBA's breakup, the members went their separate ways, seeking new creative outlets and reflecting on their personal journeys. Benny Andersson, who had been the driving force behind much of ABBA's musical success, retreated from the spotlight. He didn't immediately seek the same level of fame he had enjoyed with the band. Instead, he began to focus on projects that allowed him to explore deeper emotional and artistic themes. One of his first significant post-ABBA ventures was Chess, a musical he co-wrote with ABBA's Björn Ulvaeus in 1984. Chess was a departure from the mainstream pop sound that had defined ABBA. The musical, with its complex themes of love, politics, and power, allowed Benny to delve into more sophisticated and serious subject matter. This project marked a period of personal growth for Benny as he navigated his emotions through music. Chess became a commercial success in parts of Europe, but it was far from the global phenomenon that ABBA had been. Still, it allowed Benny to distance himself from the pressures of fame and find peace through his work. In his private moments, Benny struggled with the emotional aftermath of ABBA's disbandment. He had not only lost a band that had defined his life, but also had to come to terms with the personal cost of that success. He revealed that he kept a journal filled with unsent letters addressed to his former bandmates, Agnetha, Frida, and Björn, pouring out the frustrations, regrets, and unspoken emotions that he had kept hidden during the band's active years. These letters, he confessed, were a way for him to process the deep sadness he felt about ABBA's end and the personal conflicts that had shaped his life. They were his way of making sense of the complex and often painful journey that had been his time with ABBA. ABBA's legacy, the pain behind the glory. As the years passed, ABBA's music continued to resonate with audiences around the world. The group's songs were a permanent fixture in pop culture, often celebrated for their catchy melodies and upbeat rhythms. However, as Benny grew older and reflected on the band's legacy, he began to openly acknowledge that ABBA's success had not been built on happiness alone. In fact, he admitted that the music of ABBA was more often driven by pain, longing, and the emotional struggles of the band members than by sheer joy. Benny noted that the music of ABBA was not a reflection of carefree celebration, but rather a product of personal sacrifice and emotional turmoil. While the world had embraced ABBA's image of glamorous, smiling performers, the reality was much darker. Behind the scenes, the band members were grappling with broken relationships, divorce, and the relentless pressures of fame. The music they created was born from their personal experiences, joys, sorrows, and struggles, and it was this honesty that made their songs so relatable and powerful. ABBA's success, Benny later admitted, was in many ways a product of the band's collective vulnerability. The group worked because they were broken. They weren't perfect, and their music was never a fairy tale. It was a reflection of their real human experiences. Benny explained that the songs were the glue that held the group together even when everything else was falling apart. The band's music, though joyful on the surface, often contained an undercurrent of sadness and longing that reflected the struggles each member was enduring in their personal lives. At 78, Benny found peace with the truth about ABBA's legacy. He acknowledged that the group's success was not just about harmony and collaboration, but also about their shared emotional pain. It was the honesty behind the music that made ABBA's songs resonate so deeply with fans. As he shared his reflections, Benny did not seek to tarnish ABBA's legacy, but to humanize it, to show that even the brightest music can emerge from the darkest places. This newfound understanding of ABBA's legacy added depth to the songs that fans had long loved, revealing the true story behind the music that had shaped an entire generation. The human touch behind ABBA's sound. Benny Andersson's story is one of reflection and resilience. As the hidden architect behind many of ABBA's greatest songs, Benny crafted melodies that spoke to the hearts of millions. Yet behind every chord, there was a man trying to survive, trying to make sense of his emotions through the medium of music. Benny's life after ABBA is a reminder that even the greatest artists carry their own battles. The music he created with ABBA was not just a product of artistic collaboration, it was also a product of personal struggle, sacrifice, and emotional honesty. The revelations that Benny has shared about ABBA's music only enhance the impact it continues to have on the world today. When we listen to ABBA's timeless songs, we now understand that beneath the glitter and glamour was a story of survival, emotional struggle, and a search for connection. Benny's willingness to speak out about the pain behind ABBA's success gives us a deeper appreciation for the music. It reminds us that even the most joyous, upbeat tunes can carry with them the weight of personal experience. The human touch behind ABBA's sound is what makes it so enduring. As we listen to songs like Dancing Queen or The Winner Takes It All, we hear more than just catchy melodies. We hear the struggles of the band members, their desires, their heartbreaks, and their attempts to navigate their lives through one resemble. First, power, Chaffarel first his music. Benny's confession about the true nature of ABBA's music only makes these songs more powerful, showing that sometimes the best art is born not from happiness, but from the resilience and healing that come after great personal hardship. Conclusion: the healing power of music. ABBA's music will forever be a cornerstone of pop culture. Their songs are timeless, and their legacy is firmly cemented in the hearts of fans around the world. However, the truth behind the band's success adds a layer of depth to their music that makes it even more meaningful. Benny Andersson's reflections on ABBA's legacy remind us that music is not just about entertainment. It is a means of survival, a way to process pain, and a way to heal. ABBA's songs continue to resonate with people because they are grounded in real human experiences. And instussen fahern saich, for fear you, she will meim. Le sa hinsir, so da shiu, chioding. Certainty that their music remains powerful to this day.